The Las Vegas Raiders have went out and signed a pass rusher in Andre Carter II, and today we're going to talk about what this kid has shown on tape. To me, I absolutely love this pickup. Not because Andre Carter's, this superstar caliber player, but what Andre Carter is he's a low risk, high reward type of player. He's a guy who's in his second year in the NFL. He's been good enough to stay within the Vikings practice squad for 2 straight seasons. And I think for the Raiders, once again, you're bringing in a guy that has a little bit of potential, a little bit of upside. Carter is one of those guys that comes from a football background. If you watch his tape, he's very, very smart. He's long, he's lengthy, he has all the potential to become a really good football player. But it's all about just being able to get those reps, develop, and actually just kind of get better. And with Carter, he is a developmental player as we kind of go forward, but so was K'Lavon Chaisson, right? K'Lavon Chaisson went from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who initially drafted him. He went to the Carolina Panthers for literally one offseason, and he didn't even make it on the actual roster. They cut his ass. They're like, this guy doesn't make any sense for us. And the Raiders went ahead and said, we'll bring him in and we'll train him up, and he'll fit our scheme and system, and he'll be a good player for us, and he's been very productive for the Raiders, as kind of seen up to this point. And Andre Carter can kind of fit that same mold. Rob Leonard, the defensive line coach for the Raiders, very, very, very good coach. And I think for the Raiders, once again, you're bringing in a player that has a little bit of upside, right? You're bringing in a player who, before the 2023 NFL draft process began, some people were like, man, this guy could be a first-round pick, right? And unfortunately, he had an injury. He didn't fully get healthy from that injury. He went to the Senior Bowl, kind of got his ass kicked a little bit. Also, keep in mind, he played at Army, so the competition is not it's not the same type of competition. But with that, he's been in the NFL now for 2 seasons. He's stuck to the practice squad, and he's at least been able to stay within the NFL, right? A lot of guys get cut after, an off season or 2, right? And they never get another opportunity. But with Carter, he's going to get that opportunity. And the fact that the Raiders stole him from the Vikings practice squad, what that means is the Raiders now have to sign him officially to the 53-man practice squad. So not only for him will he get a huge payout, right? He'll go from the practice squad payout to an active roster payout, but he'll also get an opportunity to play. So the Raiders obviously lost Maxx Crosby because of the fact that he had to get ankle injury. In fact, Maxx Crosby posted on his Twitter an image of him, right, ultimately sitting in a wheelchair. And Maxx Crosby, successful ankle surgery, and he should be back. Obviously not this season, but he'll be back 6 weeks. He'll be able to start training and kind of prepping for the next season, which is perfect for the Raiders. It's kind of what you want. On top of that, the Raiders also had something else that kind of happened yesterday. Janarius Robinson was suspended by the NFL for 3 weeks due to PEDs. So the Raiders are now down not only Max, but they're also down Janarius Robinson, right? So you got 2 guys that are ultimately out now for the Raiders. So you had to bring in a guy like Andre Carter. And again, I love the pickup, right? I think when you put this guy's tape on, it kind of speaks for itself, right? There's potential, right? There's upside. And I think that's all you can really ask for with some of these younger guys. And remember, people always forget this. The NFL is not made up of Jalen Carter, Maxx Crosby, Myles Garrett, right? The NFL is not made up of those guys that are just the best players at their positions. That's not what the NFL is. Right? The NFL is made up of developmental players. It's guys that maybe weren't as good early on, and they developed for 2-3 years, and then they eventually started to be able to, really put it together by like year 5 or 6, and then they become good, productive football players, right? They're role players on winning teams. They're the Adam Butlers of the world, right? Guys that took, some time to develop. The Jordan Merediths of the world, right? The John Simpsons of the world. John Simpson's having a phenomenal season this year for the Jets, right? A lot of players in the NFL are developmental guys that take a little bit of time. It's why, as a scout, you're focused on traits, right? You're focused on that arm length. You're focused on the wingspan. You're focused on the height, the weight, the BMI, right? You're focused on all the different things when it comes to traits, right? Maybe it's pass rush technique, which was one of the reasons why the Raiders drafted Maxx Crosby. And we've seen how that's kind of worked out for us, right? Traits is a real thing that teams kind of look at. And, keep in mind, there's probably 100 guys across the league on every team, practice squad specifically, that can play edge for the Raiders. And the Raiders picked Andre Carter. So I'm excited to see what this guy can do for the Raiders. He'll probably play this upcoming week against the Jags. We'll see. There's 3 games left. They're all meaningful if you really think about it, right? You win 1 game and you're picking 7th. You win 2, you're picking 12th, right? So we'll see what ends up happening. And then finally, I kind of want to talk a little bit really quickly about a report that came out yesterday. This one came out from Josina Anderson. She basically wrote an entire article about the Las Vegas Raiders and why she thinks the Raiders are basically going to be out on Antonio Pierce, right? The headline that kind of caught my eye that got me into it was this. So she wrote, the Raiders are currently entertaining the idea of getting a new head coach, while general manager Tom Telesco is simultaneously separating himself behind the scenes. That's a crazy ass headline if you guys think about it. Tom Telesco is simultaneously separating himself behind the scenes. That's snakish, right? That headline. Like, he's separating himself behind the scenes. That's not what's really happening, right? Let's just be honest. Tom Telesco's not really doing that, right? Now, I do think there's a chance that Antonio Pierce will not be here, right? I think there's a real chance that the Raiders are, potentially putting together a list of head coaching candidates. I think there's a real chance they're considering moving off of Antonio Pierce. Yesterday I made a video where I talked about AP, and I said the Raiders have to fire this guy because he has no experience in so many different aspects. And a lot of people responded saying, why keep firing head coaches? Why keep going down this path of continuously firing head coaches? And I get that. I 100% get that, and I don't disagree with it, right? At some point, you got to pick a coach and stick with that coach. I think one of the points that I didn't get across in yesterday's video, and we're going to get into this article, but one of the things that I did not get across in yesterday's video is, Ben Johnson only is going to come out one time, right? He's only going to become a head coach one time in his entire career, and then he'll be with the team for 30 years, right? We saw this with Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid was with the Eagles for years. He became available one time, and now he'll be with the Chiefs until he retires. Bill Belichick, right? Went from the Browns to the Patriots, 1 year with the Patriots. And that kind of happens with the great coaches. Kyle Shanahan's another example. Sean McVay is another example. These coaches are only going to become available one time. And then they're going to be on these teams for the long term, right? It's very, very rare that those type of coaches become available again. Well, one coach is available at this point. That's Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is going to be a great coach in the NFL. And the thing is, I'm not saying Antonio Pierce can't have success, because he can, right? This year he can go out and hire Clay Kubiak or Clint Kubiak, right? The brothers. Pick one of them, right? Whichever one it is. And that guy might be a great coach down the line, and he might give us 2 to 3 years as a great offense, right? And it could work, right? But the thing is you'll always have to pick great offensive coordinators for it to work if your head coach doesn't call plays himself, right? And I just feel like if Ben Johnson's available and we get the number 1 overall pick, and if Ben Johnson really likes the idea of, hey, I get to pick my own quarterback. I don't like Caleb Williams, right? I'm not sold on him. I don't think he's going to be a great quarterback, which some people obviously think. He might say, I like Cam Ward or I like Shedeur Sanders, so I want to go there and I want to coach him up. The Raiders also have a pretty good defense. And I think the Raiders just got to kind of consider that, right? And I think when articles like what Josina Anderson's kind of putting it out there, I feel like it almost comes to the fact that maybe the Raiders would fire Antonio Pierce if they know for a fact they can hire Ben Johnson. Right. And now I think Ben Johnson picks wherever he wants to go, right? If there's 5 teams, he gets to decide where he wants to go. If the Jags job is ultimately available as well, then he might go there because they have Trevor Lawrence, and he might feel like Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback. But the fact that Josina Anderson's putting this out, that Tom Telesco's separating himself behind the scenes, the fact that we heard Mark Davis comment just a couple days ago about AP and saying that, hey, I've been disappointed with AP. He hasn't been great. AP and Tom Telesco are 2 separate people. They didn't come together. So that kind of hints a little bit that we might fire AP as well, right? And that doesn't mean Tom Telesco will be fired as well. To me, it's just interesting that we're getting these reports from these real insiders, right? Albert Breer put it out a couple weeks back as well that the Raiders may move off of AP as well. And he's a legit insider, as is Josina Anderson, right? These people know the Tom Telescos. These people know people that work within the Raiders front offices, right? The director of player personnel or champ killer, whoever it might be, right? And it's just interesting that the Raiders, yes, I agree at some point we got to stick with the head coach for 5 years and see if he can get it right. But that means we got to stick with the right head coach as well, right? Not just any head coach. We got to get what has been proven to win in the NFL, right? And I think that's the great play callers, right? The great play callers kind of control the NFL. At least in my opinion, that's kind of what I see. But we'll see what ends up happening, man. The Raiders did bring in a defensive end. There's more rumors and reports about AP. We'll see what ends up happening, man. Let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.